everyone, I'm Patty Behan and thank you for joining me in the studio today for our Card Making 101 series. Up next is the moment you've all been waiting for. We're going to make our very first card and doing it 3 ways. We'll start simple and step things up with each version. It's like a crafty glow up, so hit that subscribe button and let's make some card making magic. Okay, we're finally going to start making our first card, and I'm going to show you 3 designs. I'm going to go from really simple to a little more involved. So the first thing we're going to do is just stamp with some dye ink pads. And I have this stamp set here that I'll be using, and I have a card panel. So there's 2 reasons to use a card panel. It's great for beginners. So if you make a mistake, you don't mess up your whole entire card. And then it just looks nicer when you attach the card panel to the finished card. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to teach you how to ink up a stamp. And so I'm going to start with my biggest flower. I'm going to make a design across the front of the card like so, going in a line this way. And to ink up your stamp, you take your pad and you just tap on the stamp to apply the ink. Very important, you want to make sure you ink the stamp and not stamp into the ink, because when you do this, you're going to get ink all over your stamping block. Okay, so now that I have that full of ink, I'm going to place my design sort of in the center. When you're having a design that covers the length of the card, it's best to start in the center so that if you run out of room, your focal point is going to show nicely, but you can always go off the page if you're going across. Okay, so we have that. And next, I'm going to take my next color, which is Guppy, and then do the same thing. You ink the stamp, and then I want to get this pretty close to the other flower. And that's another great thing about using clear stamps. You can see where your image is going to go. So we have that like so. And I'm going to repeat the same thing. And I'm thinking that I want to put my sentiment around here, so I'm going to go up a little with this flower. So I want to make sure that I'm next to the other one, and then perfect. Now I'm going to add some leaves to add a little interest. So I have them over here, and I'll start with the bigger leaf first. And I'm going to use this color. It's called 4. It's a nice dark green color, like kind of evergreen. And again, you're going to ink up the stamp. You don't need to press hard with these pads. They're foam pads, and the ink gets applied really easily. Okay, and I'll stamp that right there. And then, so another thing about when you're designing the images on a card is you want to have odd numbers. All right, so see how I have that ink got on my block? I'm just going to wipe that off so that I make sure that it won't transfer onto my card. So if you notice things like that ahead of time, you're ahead of the game. Okay, I'm going to put another leaf there. ink up the stamp again. You want to make sure you ink up the stamp between each stamping if you're repeating using the same stamp. Put one here. Okay, and now I'm gonna put a little guy here because we want to have room for the sentiment. So I have a smaller leaf, and again, wipe off that extra ink. And I'm gonna go right here. All right, that's beautiful. And I think I'm gonna add maybe some more of these smaller leaves, like going off the page. So again, because I'm working in odd numbers, see how you have 4 leaves? It's, even though there's 3 of one kind and 1 of the other, it's still a little bit off balance or something. So just go like down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this at the top, going off the page. And do you see how that just makes everything look more finished? Okay, so now we're going to stamp our sentiment. And let me put this cover back on here. And I'm going to use the Black Widow. It's a nice contrast to the colors and it'll stand out. People will see your message. So I'm looking at the room that I have left here, and that's, I'm going to pick a sentiment that'll fit. Let's see which one I like. I think I'm going to go with the happy birthday. That'll be good. So I'm going to put this on my stamping block. And make sure I ink this up good. Oops, I almost did it upside down. Okay, and then this looks like it'll fit great right here. Perfect. And there you have it. That didn't take long at all, and it's really pretty. So I just want to let this dry a second before I glue it to the top. Okay, and now I'm going to use a tape runner to attach it to the back, to attach it to the front of the card, I should say. And you don't have to cover the whole card. You just put it around the sides and like a dab in the middle. And then you place it on your card like so. And I'm going to start from the top. And then there you have it. We have our first card. Now I'm going to get set up to make our next card, and we'll be right back. Okay, for our next card, we're going to do some heat embossing, and so it takes it up a notch. And we have a whole series in our In the Studio playlist of heat embossing if you want to learn more about it. But today I'm just going to go over the basics. What I have here is super fine detail embossing powder in clear, and what this is a fine grain embossing powder that is good to use when you have a very detailed stamp. And then I have an ink pad that dries slowly so that the powder will stick to the ink when you stamp it. And I'm using Tim Holtz Distress Black Soot. And so the first thing I'm going to do is ink up my stamp. And again, I'm starting with my focal point in the center. And I'm going to do a little different design this time too. And I'm going to stamp that down. And we'll pour the powder over top. And you can be very generous. We'll take off the excess and then we'll put it back into the jar. And then we'll take our heat gun and we'll melt it. And you'll know that it's melted when the image starts to get dark. Okay, that looks good. We're just going to let it cool down a second. I'll get my scrap paper here again. And I'm going to grab a little flower this time. And I'm going to ink up my stamp. And I'm going to go in a little bit of a curve over here. Like so. Pour the powder over top. Take off the excess. And before I melt that one, since I'm stamping far away, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process of stamping the next one. And I'm going to try to go in a curve again, like so. And I'll get my embossing powder over here. And we'll go ahead and melt both of these flowers. Looks good. We're just gonna let this cool a second. I'm done with this for now. And I'm gonna add some leaves in here, and instead of embossing, I'm just gonna go ahead and stamp with ink. And I'm gonna start with some bigger leaves first. Just lightly tap the stamp. I'll put one here. We'll add another. And I'm going to wipe off that ink so it doesn't transfer onto my card. Put one over here, like so. And we'll add one more big leaf here down at the bottom. Go right here. That looks good. And then I'm gonna add a few little leaves. My little leaf here. Let's see. I think I'm going to add one like up here. And then wipe that off. Add it right at the bottom here off the page, like so. And I'm going to clean that off. And now I'm going to color this in, but I noticed that I have a little spot of ink here, but we'll fix that later when we get to it. Okay, so now we're going to color in the flowers, and I'm going to use the guppy for our middle flower, and I'm going to put the ink onto the craft sheet. And then this is a big flower, so you need a good amount of ink there. And then I'm using a paintbrush, and I'm dipping it in water, and I'm going to get the ink on the brush, and for my first stroke I'm dabbing it off, and I'm going to go ahead and paint. And the good thing about using embossing powder, the paint kind of resists the embossing powder, and you don't have to worry about staying in the lines as much. And of course you could use markers or colored pencils to color in your designs, but if you're just starting out, so you don't have to invest in a lot of supplies, you know you're going to need ink pads to use in your cards, so you might as well just use them as your coloring medium as well. And then if you decide you want to try other ways to color, then you can go from there. I have to add a little bit more water. And I'm just doing a quick coloring. I'm not really doing any shading. I just want to show you the basics. It doesn't have to be fancy. It looks nice either way. You just want to be careful when you get to the edges, not to go outside the lines. I think that's good. We'll move on to our next color, and I'm going to use our High Tide ink for the other two flowers. So you just, again, tap the ink onto your craft sheet, clean out your brush, add a little water, dab off your first stroke. This is a real pretty blue. Okay, now we're ready to color in the centers, and for that I'm going to use some yellow. This is Shooting Star. And I'm not going quite to the edge in case it just bleeds into the flower. Okay. So now we have this little spot to deal with, and I thought maybe the sentiment might fit to cover it up, but that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut this portion of the card, and then we'll attach it that way to the front of the card. So I'm just gonna go start loosely around the edge to see how I like it. I'm leaving like a pretty big border. And I'm trying to decide if I want to just do it here or maybe not. I'll just go up here just a little bit, like so. Okay, so now I'm going to take my card front and I'm going to see if I have room for my sentiment still in that spot. I really like how that looks anyway. It just gives it a little more interest. So I'm not sure if the Miss You might be a little smaller. Let's try that out. We always try to fix our little mistakes that we make. This is a little smaller. Before we throw it in the trash. So I think that will work. All right, so we're going to tape this down first with our tape runner. I'm going to try to get these weird edges so they don't stick up. Okay. And now I'm positioning it to the side of the card. And I think that's just perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and ink up our stamp with the Black Widow. And I'm cleaning off my hands. I got a little ink on there. And then perfect. I really like how that turned out. I think that mistake really just made this card one little bit better. All right, so now we're gonna clear up this space and we're going to show you our last card. Okay, now for our final card, we're going to add some extra dimension and make it 3D. And we're going to add a little sparkle. So what I've done is I've already embossed these flowers and cut most of the pieces out, but I wanted to show you fussy cutting. So I left this one not cut. So what fussy cutting is when you cut out your image and you cut it out close to the outline, or you can cut it right on the outline. Personally, I like to have a little bit of the white showing, but some people like to get right up to that black line. But so when you're doing so, the best way to do it is you have a small pair of scissors, and instead of turning the scissors, you want to turn the paper as you're cutting. It just gives you more control. See, I'm not turning my scissors, I'm just turning the paper. And you get a smoother cut doing it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out this whole flower. Now you can, if you really don't like to fussy cut, there's a lot of stamp sets that have coordinating dies to cut out the images for you. So, but when you're first starting out, I would not invest in die cutting because that's a big expense. I would start just cutting out your images. And you'll find that it's very relaxing. And when I have a big piece of paper off to the side when I'm cutting, I just cut it off like I just did. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces, and let me put this, try to make this flat so we can see how we're going to put our flowers and our leaves. So I think I'm just gonna make a little circle, like a cluster. And then, so this is what I usually do. I kind of, when you have the luxury of having pieces already cut, I kind of just like place them. Some people just like, no, just put them down. Not me, I'm a planner. I can't do that. Okay. All right, so I want to have room for my sentiment over here. So that looks good. I think that looks good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my leaves flat. So I'm just going to use my tape runner. Okay. Put that there. And now I'm going to use foam squares. This is what we use to give it a little bit of dimension to glue these down. So I'm just going to leave these guys here, and I'm going to start with my bigger flower, and you can cut these. They do come in like different sizes, but it's just as easy to like cut them to size. See, I'm gonna put one here and maybe just one more here. Like so. And they're double-sided, so they have a little bit, they have a little liner that you have to peel off of both of the other side. Okay. Go ahead. Slip this guy back in. Like so. And I think I'm gonna tuck one guy underneath here. So I'll just do that flat. Like so. And then I'll go ahead and pop this guy up. And I really only need like that one square. I'll put a little tape runner on this side. Take off the liner. Oh, that looks beautiful. Okay. Now we have to stamp our sentiment, and let's see what we have. I think the I love you will look nice. I'm just double checking. Okay. I'm gonna ink up our stamp with the black again. Stamp it right there. Beautiful. Oh, I love that. Okay, so now I want to add a little sparkle to the center, and I have some stickles, and I'm going to just fold this back again. And you want to test them out on a scrap piece of paper, because make sure you have a good flow going. And then we're going to go ahead and put this right in the center. And it just adds a little extra, something special, without too much fuss. It's really easy to do. Okay. And let me bring this up close so that you can see it. And once this dries, you'll see the sparkles. And so there we have our last card. Now I'm going to come back and I'll show you all of our finished cards. Okay, so now we have our 3 easy cards. First, we started out with just stamping with different colors of ink. Next, we did some embossing, and we colored in the images with the ink pads and a brush. And then we did the same coloring in and embossing on this card, but we just added extra dimension by popping up some of the images and adding a little sparkle with our stickles. So we hope this inspires you to start card making. You don't have to go crazy with supplies, and if you just have some ink pads and a stamp set, you can make beautiful cards. If you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and stick around. More beginner-friendly card making fun is coming soon.